Okay, I think we're live here in YouTube. Trying to get the Instagram stream going. Having a little trouble. Okay. Looks like having a little trouble with Instagram. I'm going to go ahead and start. And we'll forget the Instagram for now. Okay. All right. Got a couple people watching. Sorry, this is my first time doing this live. We're figuring it out as we go. Oh, that's good. Okay, we're just going to do the YouTube live. Here we go. Okay, so with these streams, with these live streams, my intention with this is to give a perspective on astrology and do a transmission about what is happening astrologically right now, but to also go into concepts of what astrology is and some of my views on how to understand it conceptually and why it's something we pay attention to. So I got a bunch of great information to get into, and I'm going to start by talking a little bit about something else, which is another aspect of this, is the interrelationship between these different systems, numerological, sacred geometry systems that many people are familiar with now, that are all interrelated with each other. So there's this interrelationship between chakras, signs in the zodiac, the tarot archetypes, and many of these other sacred number systems. So I've created this system called the Eternal Dragon, and as well as these this kind of cosmic clock of the astrological movements that are happening, there's also something very powerful about this randomness in doing tarot card readings. And I have my computer set up to give a random tarot card of the day, and the one for today is very appropriate. So if I'm going to go to it here, hopefully you can all see it properly. Oh, let's see how this is going to work. See if I can get this to fit my screen properly. Bear with me with the troubleshooting. Okay, there we go. So the card of today is Muladhara, the root chakra. It's very appropriate, and as I get into the astrological patterns that are unfolding right now, the root chakra is a really appropriate card for today, because there's a lot of things that are stepping into this kind of forward momentum. We've been in this, in the Chinese astrology, we've been in the year of the water rabbit, the yin water rabbit for 2023. There's this very inward, contemplative, emotional aspects. And as well as that, all of these outer planets of Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto have been all retrograde over the 2023, and over the past several months, they're all starting to go direct. So these patterns, these like bigger patterns that affect all of us, are starting to get this forward momentum after being going retrograde or going backwards for a period of time. As well as that, we're moving into the Chinese zodiac year of the Yang wood dragon. This very outward expressed, think about the energy of a dragon. It's this like powerful stepping into authority, and the energy of wood, of growth, and the Yang principle of the masculinity, this the forward action. And through all of that, this is an excellent reminder to stay grounded, to get rooted. The root chakra is physically in the place in our body, like in the perineum, which is between the anus and the genitals. And it's this place where it's our rooting place of safety. The word Muladhara, literally in Sanskrit, means the root of existence. And it's this place where we find balance, where we physically find balance. Like if you lose your balance, your root chakra will try to restabilize. And also, everybody's felt this, like when you go into a situation that feels safe or something feels like it's destabilizing, you clench. You clench. And it's so the root chakra, the root, physically that place in the musculature, but the energetic vortex of the root chakra is finding where our safety and balance and rootedness lives. And so this image is like, how can we find this sense of I'm rooted, I'm balanced, I am in this dynamic equilibrium through whatever I'm moving through. And this card in my book on the Eternal Dragon has this quote I've chosen to go with it, which I love, from Isabel Allende, which is, "Roots are not in a landscape or a country or a people. They are inside you." It's something to remember as we move through all the movements coming in 2024 and what's happening right now. It's like the rootedness that lives inside us that's not dependent on something external. That's the growth being invited by the root chakra. Okay, so before we get into the astrological patterns, I want to talk a little bit about some concepts in astrology. Before we do that, I'm going to invite a little meditation to drop into this around the root chakra. Going to get a little bit of music going. Okay, great. So as we step into this year of 2024 and feeling the rootedness in our bodies, I invite you to find a comfortable position that's upright, finding the balance of your spine. And feel your root. Feel that physical place in your body. Connect with your feet. The root chakra is connected down through the whole legs. You can feel the roots, the channels extending down through your legs. And reaching down into the floor. Breathing deeply. Feeling connected to our base. Feeling connected to the roots of the land. Wherever we are, we're always planted on the earth in this upright position like a tree. And we have access to that anywhere we are, whatever's happening. We can always connect down into this rootedness. It's finding that place of stability. As we start to talk about the themes of this year and the themes going into this first new moon of January, I invite you to stay in that connection to the rootedness, stay in that stability, that feeling of safety, of calm, of being balanced that you have in your root chakra. All right. So now I want to talk a little bit about the patterns of astrology in a general sense before we get into the actual themes for this new moon. So something to always remember is there's these alchemical principles that are present in all of these systems of esoteric alchemy, astrology, tarot, chakras, all of these things, all of the alchemy traditions. There's this core understanding is that everything is one. And the secondary meaning behind that is that everything that we experience is a mirror. that everything in the external world is a mirror of what's happening inside us internally. And so everything that's happening astrologically, there's these outer patterns moving through the planets, and that is reflected in these outer movements through society, through these bigger patterns that we see unfolding on these geopolitical scales, like through what's happening in the news. And there's a reflection of that happening inside our own bodies. And through this, it's these waves of energy moving that we have a free will while there's these waves that we're swimming through. It's like we have a choice of how we want to swim through that water. And so understanding the patterns that are happening astrologically is like knowing how the waves are moving so that we can surf it in a way that's graceful. One of the things that I've realized about looking at astrology charts is that everything, if you think of everything being born in the universe out of the void, there's this, you can think about it as like something is being created, and as that something is created, it's like a fabric being stretched in one direction, and then it creates a pull in the opposite direction. So all patterns have a polarity. There's a dynamic tension between opposites in everything that happens. And so everything that happens astrologically is this pull between opposite forces. Wherever there's a planet in a certain placement, we can look at what the opposite placements are, and understanding the zodiac as these signs that we're all familiar with, but that really they're axes. So it's like Capricorn is in an axis with Cancer. Aries is in an axis with Libra. And it's this dynamic tension in the axis is what's important to look at. So when we look at understanding, I want to talk a little bit also about understanding modern astrology and ancient astrology, because it's become very popular these days to talk about all of these asteroids and celestial objects that are moving. And for such a long time on planet Earth, before the invention of telescopes, is 7 planets. There's the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. And that's what we have access to. That's what we can see with the naked eye. And then with the invention of telescopes, there's been this gradual discovery over the course of the past 100 years of more and more of these celestial objects, starting with the 2 outer gas giant planets of Neptune and Uranus, and then followed by this discovery of all of these other dwarf planets and Kuiper belt objects and trans-Neptunian objects. And there's so many we could talk about, and so many of them now have names. And just to look at it here for a second, if we see these designations of the minor planets, more than 500,000 minor planets have received a number, and 20,000, 4% have received a name. So 20,000 named planets, minor planets, that's dwarf planets and asteroids and things like that. So there's so many. You could just go on and on and on talking about the meaning of these things. And when we look at the meaning of each planet, there's a significance to the mythology surrounding the naming of it. And we can see that with all of the asteroids and minor planets as well. But as I really focus on, basically there's 4 asteroids, dwarf planets in the asteroid belt. And then there's 4 of these centaurs, which I like to pay attention to. And in the asteroid belt, if we look, just to give a sense of scale for a minute, for looking at the solar system, this is a size accurate scaling of the planets. So we have the Sun, and we have these 4 what are called terrestrial planets, the rocky planets inside the asteroid belt: Mars, Earth, Venus, Mercury. Then we have the 4 gas giants outside the asteroid belt: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And then we can see the scale of all of these other asteroids, and they're tiny. But some of them, have a significant, but they're very secondary influence on these astrological patterns. So I'm going to be talking about some of them, but they're they're more like qualifiers to what's happening in the other planets than like major patterns in themselves. And just to give a sense of the scale of our solar system, this first image in the top left is what is the inner planets. So this like cloud of asteroids, and then the red ring is Mars, green is Earth, blue Venus, yellow Mercury, and then Jupiter surrounding the asteroid belt. And Jupiter really serves as this like protector. The orbit, the gravitational mass of Jupiter is really what protects the Earth and these inner planets from, you know, collision with bigger asteroids, because its gravity pulls in objects that you know, come from outside the solar system. And then here we see that this whole image is in this little gray box, and we see the orbit of these outer planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and then Pluto is in this kind of like elliptical orbit. And all of these little blue dots are these Kuiper belt objects. And then we see Sedna here, who's this very like outer orbital planet, asteroid. And then here in this image, this huge red elliptical orbit is the orbit of Sedna. So we can see like how far out it goes from the rest of all these objects. And then in this last image, this is an image of the Oort cloud, which there's all this other stuff out here, which is still a part of the Earth's solar system, but it's just like so distant, we haven't studied that much of it. So there's so much we can look at, so many massive objects moving around us, but there's these main kind of like resonant harmonics created by these certain planets, which we'll get into. Okay, so that's a little prefacing of astrology. And something else I want to say, you know, is as we get into this, is there's a lot of focus in modern astrology of like looking at our own psychology and looking at things at really this kind of like surface layer of what's happening in the movement of the planets in the external world, and like this trying to make predictions or fortune telling about our own lives, or like what's going to happen. I find that much less helpful than like looking at it as these like energy wave patterns for contemplation. And it's like when we let go of this, like when we let go of the desires to know like, oh, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen in the external world? Let me feel safe by having some sort of knowledge about it. It's like, okay, no, understanding that there's these waves and that we have a choice of how to move through these waves. Okay, great. All right, so a little bit about the zodiac. As we look at the zodiac, something to understand about the zodiac is that what we're really talking about is the seasons of the Earth. It's not an image of what's happening in the constellations. While we use the stars in the background as this like guiding point, the first day of Capricorn is the winter solstice. The first day of Aries is the spring solstice. The spring equinox. What we're looking at is this movement of cycles through time. And these cycles of time operate on many levels. So in the movement of the year, we can understand what the energy of Capricorn is by understanding what this period right now of winter is like. What is the nature of this like January energy, which also corresponds to the time of day of like right after midnight. And and there's correspondences in the phase of a single lifetime of a person, in the phases of a project cycle. Anything that has a life cycle has these patterns of movement that it goes through. And so we can look at the quadrants of these of this cycling through time as these like four major components. So the spring Aries, like waking up in the first part of the day, is this like initiation of self, and then going into worldly manifestation through Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Then this alchemical integration of going into nighttime in the fall through Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. And I'm busting through these kind of quickly to get to some of the patterns. But right now we're in this phase, which I call the vision quest. These are my names for these different quadrants, by the way. This vision quest phase, where we've crossed the winter solstice, we've crossed the darkest part of the year, where the days are really short. And it's like going from midnight to 6 a.m., which is a time when everything's sleeping, and it's like the dream phase. It's going into sleep and dreaming. And so this time of the year, Capricorn is one of the most misunderstood signs, because Capricorn, it's a very quiet sign. People associate Capricorn with ambition and drive and business and like these kinds of things. And there's a truth to that, because it's really about intention setting, but it's not action. Capricorn is not about action. It's about this getting quiet and like in the stillness, seeing the intention or crafting the intention for the next phase that then moves through this exploratory period of Aquarius, which is Aquarius is this like strange time. It's a strange time of night. It's 3 a.m. It's like February, which is the time when animals are in the womb but are not born yet. The animals are born in spring. It's when the fetus is like not formed into a body. It's this strange like primordial soup kind of time period. Aquarius is weird. It's a weirdness. You know, there's a lot of talk about like the age of Aquarius and how it's like brotherly love and all these kinds of things, which it is, but there's a strangeness to it. There's a strangeness of like, oh, we set the intention and then we explore, and it's like going through the belly of the whale through this like weird time of the darkness of night that then comes to the vision of Pisces. Pisces is when it's like right before you wake up, and the most intense dreaming that happens right before you wake up. That's Pisces. That's the vision. So these three signs in particular are very at play right now, as you'll see when I get into the chart. And right now, the sun is in Capricorn. So the main energy that's happening right now is this intention setting. And it's like a lot of people get into January and they're like, all right, new time of the year. We got to do all the sales and like get stuff going and like get your business launched. And it's like, no, that's not the right energy. It's the energy of planning, of mapping what's going to happen, of setting the intentions. But it's like the action is Aries. Aries is the action. That's the energy of life starts to get rolling, and it really start expanding and blooming in March after the spring equinox. And so this is about coming back into alignment with the patterns of nature as much as it's about understanding these kind of like psychological aspects of these different signs. All right. Okay. So that's a little preface on the axes and the quadrants and the zodiac. So now let's get into the actual chart. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the chart here. Okay, so here's the chart for the new moon, which is today, January 11th at 6:56 in the morning was the exact minute of the new moon. So, as you can see, as we're looking at here, we've got these many different patterns going on. And I'm going to zoom into different parts of this to highlight certain aspects of it. So the first thing, obviously, to talk about is the sun and moon in Capricorn. So as I was saying, Capricorn is this energy of intention setting. And right now it's the new moon. You know, there's a lot of focus on the full moon. The new moon is just as important. Like in any kind of cycling, there's these peaks and troughs. It's the in-breath and the out-breath. And so the winter solstice is not more important than the summer solstice. It's kind of arbitrary where you want to start the cycle. It's like, okay, are we focusing on the in-breath or the out-breath? And the new moon is really the out-breath of when the energy is at its lowest, but it's also at this time of like when insight becomes most available. So it's a great time for contemplation on the new moon, a great time for getting quiet and introspection and contemplation. And it's in this Capricorn time. So there's a lot of Capricorn energy going on right now. So right now it's a powerful time for intention setting, but also remembering stay rooted through all that process. So we can get really excited about our intentions and our visions, but we want to stay grounded as we're and stay with a pacing that feels appropriate as we move through the plans that we're making for our life. At the same time, there's also, we see here Mars, it's a little circle with the arrow, and Pholus, which is this other planet, this centaur here. And with the centaurs, just another like quick little interlude about centaurs. The centaurs are objects that cross across the orbit of Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter. and they come from the Kuiper Belt, which is the outer. Pluto is a Kuiper Belt object. It's the all these many objects that exist past the orbit of Neptune. But the centaurs are these objects that cross across the border of these planets. So they're transiting and kind of like, you can see them as like tying connection between the energies of these outer planets. So the past and the future, and revolution and dreaming, and connecting these different patterns with each other. There are a lot of centaurs. I focus on these four main ones: Pholus, Chiron, Chariklo, and Nessus, which I'll get into. They are the largest and the first discovered centaurs that have a significance as I've seen them in their movement. But so Pholus rules turning points. It rules these dramatic turning points in life. And I don't really pay attention to it unless it's making an aspect with something. So right now, it's because it's in this conjunction with Mars, I'm like, okay, something to pay attention to with Pholus. And when Pholus does something in your birth chart, really fascinating to look at. So for those of you who have Capricorn birthday, and Pholus has a very long orbit. Pholus is 91 years to go around the zodiac. So when Pholus transits your sun, there's like a turning point in your life. So for me personally, it just transited my sun sign, because I'm December 30th. So it's a big life turning point for me. And I feel that shift happening in my own life. But because Pholus is transiting Mars, it's for the collective. It's like a turning point in vitality, in energy, in available energy, specifically around intention setting, around our ability to get clear on what we want to create. This is really important, because another principle of these esoteric alchemy understanding and like moving into this development of our being, of our soul, is the principles of magic, in getting really clear in what our wants are, what our desires are. Because there's these energies inside us. When we get completely aligned, everything in existence starts to shift to be in alignment with that. I'll go into a little bit more in a bit, like what that means in terms of timelines, and like how I see that part of it. But there's this turning point in our vitality for the visioning, our available energy for visioning and intention setting. At the same time, we see Mercury and Venus here in Sagittarius. Mercury and Venus are always within one or two signs of the sun, because they're inside the orbit of the Earth. So from our perspective, they're always close to the sun, which is why you see Venus as like in the early morning before the sun comes up, or at sunset. The Venus will be the only star visible in the sky, like just above the horizon. Venus and Mercury in Sagittarius. Mercury is the mental activity. Venus is like what we love, what we find passion for. Here in Sagittarius, so there's this opening of mental energy and passion for this like higher learning. Sagittarius is understanding, and when you're thinking about the zodiac signs, they cycle into each other. It's not like this clear distinctions. There's like this gradient as each sign cycles into the next one. So Sagittarius is like the understanding. It's like the understanding at the end of the journey, at the end of a long trip. And then going into Capricorn, which is the quietness and then the intention setting for the next phase. So Sagittarius is about understanding. Sagittarius on the axis with Gemini. Gemini is about this kind of like immediate communication. Intuition is the word I use for Gemini. Whereas Sagittarius is about understanding. Gemini is like this immediate, like, okay, quick, like having conversations and dialogue, where Sagittarius is connecting to this like cosmic understanding. So this energy here of the mind and what we're passionate about, opening to this like cosmic understanding. And Ceres is the largest dwarf planet in the solar system. It's technically an asteroid in the asteroid belt, but it's like looks like a planet. It's one of the few asteroids that's got enough gravitational mass that it's round like a planet. So Ceres is very significant, and it represents where abundance lies. Ceres is the goddess of the harvest and agriculture and the abundance of the earth. So like this Venus and Ceres conjunct, it's like this beautiful alignment of like, oh, finding this joy and passion for discovering, understanding new ways of connecting with abundance. That's what this conjunction says here to me. And so all of these energies pointing towards like, okay, vision setting, connecting with what abundance means. And at the same time, we also have Pluto. Pluto being the underworld. Pluto's representation, and Pluto is the underworld god in Greek mythology or Roman mythology. And Pluto signifies where something that is in the unconscious is being unearthed. And a lot of these outer planets too, it's like, if we think about the discovery of them, for such a long time, these 7 planets that I named were the 7 planets of astrology. But with the discovery of some of these outer planets, including Pluto, it's like if you think about the 20th century, it's like the whole idea of there even being an unconscious is relatively new. This idea of unearthing ancestral patterns, of unearthing deep buried traumas, of delving into the psyche, that's become a collective concept in the past 100 years since the discovery of Pluto and some of these other planets, which have to do with these more subconscious aspects of the psyche. So Pluto is just leaving Capricorn. So Pluto is leaving the energy of the intention setting. So Pluto spends about 20 years in each sign. So the past 20 years, if you think about that, from like around the year 2003, has been this time of like this transformation, unearthing of how we view what our intentions are. You know, I see that like the Occupy movement as being a really strong example of this. Of it's like, okay, we want something, but we don't really know what it is. We're trying to make an intention, but it's not clear yet about like what we want to do, what we're trying to manifest. And so as Pluto starts to move out of Capricorn, it's like we're transitioning out of that phase where it's like, okay, our intentions have become clear. And now it's going into Aquarius. So this next 20-year cycle is like, okay, how do we then work together to explore that? The intention has gotten clear. Now let's get together and do it and like come together in groups. Aquarius rules this group dynamics, teamwork, leadership as a collective, versus Leo, Aquarius's opposite, is about like self-sovereignty and the self-leadership. So Pluto moving into that is very significant. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the past several months have seen, and as we go into 2024, we'll continue to see all of the outer planets starting to go direct. So Pluto just went direct a couple weeks ago. Saturn and Neptune also went direct during the fall of 2023. Jupiter has just gone direct also, and then Uranus in a couple weeks is going to go direct in Taurus. Uranus is the last one. So we see all the outer planets starting to move direct. So it's this momentum in these outer cyclings is starting to gain traction and go forward. So Pluto being one strong example of this. Okay, so that's our cluster up here of the Sun, Moon, Pluto in Capricorn, Mars, Pholus in Capricorn, Mercury, Venus, Ceres in Sagittarius. So then we have this other clustering here, which is making a very interesting aspect. While we have the Mercury in Sagittarius, Mercury is making a square with Neptune in Pisces. So a square is a challenging aspect. The primary, there's, again, we could get crazy with like all the different possible aspects, but the main ones that I look at when I'm looking at a chart is the conjunction, which is when 2 planets are right on top of each other. The opposition, which we don't see, I don't have Vesta. Vesta is this planet, this little asteroid here. I don't have it drawn, but you can see Vesta is opposing Mercury, directly opposite. The square, which is 90 degrees, which are these red lines, like squaring here, we see Neptune and Mercury in a square. And then the trine, which are these green lines of 60 degrees, and the sextile, which is the 30-degree line. So the opposition and the square are challenging aspects. So when something is squaring, it's like, okay, there's some sort of, I wouldn't say disharmony, but there's a tension to be resolved. It's always an opportunity. It's like when there's a smoothly flowing aspect, the trine and the sextile are smoothly flowing aspects. We see like a graceful benefit happening. But when there's a square, it's a tension line that there's an opportunity for resolution to happen. So we're never framing it as like, oh, something bad is happening because there's a square and an opposition. There's an opportunity for growth being presented. So Mercury, in this very cosmic understanding, conscious awareness, coming right to the this point between the cusp between Sagittarius and Capricorn. And then we see Neptune here in Pisces. Neptune has been in Pisces for quite some time. Saturn has just recently crossed into Pisces. This is very interesting, and both have just recently gone direct. Pisces, as I said, it's the sign of vision. It's the vision. It's the vision at the end of the vision quest. It's the dream that happens right before we wake up. So wherever Pisces is the subconscious. Pisces is the deep meditation. Pisces is opposing Virgo. So Virgo, you could see, is like, it's like this, the service being outward in the world, harvest. It's like doing community service is Virgo, versus Pisces is like the monk that's meditating in the ashram alone, going into the deep visioning. So Neptune and Saturn going direct in Pisces it's like, okay, the visioning is opening, Neptune, imagination, but it's like we're also seeing the challenge. Saturn is the challenge planet. Saturn is connected to the word Satan. It's the oppositional force. It's the adversary, and it's not something to be hated or feared or rejected. Saturn is where we embrace the challenge that helps us to grow. It's a universal principle that there's the challenge. Challenge helps us grow. That's what the nature of Saturn is. So we're seeing the challenge and confrontation and the opening of the psyche into the subconscious in Pisces as these planets move direct here. I also see Nessus, which is another centaur that's just kind of more recently come into my awareness. Is again, it's like in the early discovery phase, the centaurs that were discovered early on, Chiron here, Pholus, which I talked about, Chariklo, and Nessus. And these are, in Greek mythology, Roman mythology, these are all centaurs that are connected in kind of like a similar thread of storytelling around Hercules, around the mythology of Hercules. Nessus, without getting too deep into the story behind it, Nessus is like, it has to do with the end of suffering, like coming to a point where it's like, where there's a final culmination of a pattern, of like an unseen pattern, where it's like, it's not something that we created. Nessus has to do with the ancestral patternings, the inherited patternings, things that happen in our life that were not our fault, like things that can be traumas and baggages and pain that we've inherited. And so where Nessus is moving is where those things are transitioning out of being present. So Nessus in Pisces, along with these other planets, it's like, okay, there's like this pain release happening in the subconscious, and happening with Pisces, and also making these smooth, this sextile relationship, Neptune, with Pluto and with the Sun Moon. So it's a harmonious time to be setting intentions based on that, to be setting intentions. Capricorn, Earth energy. Earth is like material things. It's like planning and intention setting in the material world. But Pisces is the water sign, is a water sign. It's like the subconscious that lives in the emotions and the deep feelings. So creating intentions that are around that, around shifting into the feeling vibration that we want to live in. It's like shedding the patterns, shedding the things that we accept that are not in alignment with the vibration that we want to feel in our subconscious being, the body, the deep buried feelings that exist in the body. Something else to mention is Capricorn is also opposing Cancer, a water sign, Cancer being about connection. So it's like, as these intentions are being set, as we're thinking about this vitality for what we want to create, it's like the unlock for Capricorn is to make it connected to people, make it connected to roots, to family, to the family tree. It's like if we're just like in our own selfish, like, oh, I want to do this and I'm creating intentions for this, it's not activated, it's not rooted, it's not powerfully Cancer being like the rooting, the connecting down into people and into the threads of connection that exist in all of life. Okay, so that's some of those patterns. Another thing to mention, we've been in this patterning for a long time with Chiron and Eris. Chiron is the wounded healer. Wherever Chiron shows up, it's like there. That's where our wounding, our deepest wounding in your own birth chart. Chiron is a designation of where the deepest wounding exists for you, and Chiron has an orbit of 50 years approximately, so it takes a long time to go through one sign. Eris, this upside down Venus here, is the discord planet. Eris is where there's like a shakeup in the feelings, and Eris has a very long orbit, 556 years. So it's spent a long time, like the past 100 years. Eris has been in Aries. So this whole past 100 years has been a shakeup of identity. And as Chiron is starting to come into alignment with Eris, there's like discord, like wounding around identity, around who am I, around my own self-directed action. You see this as like the unfolding of identity politics, of us coming into grips with what are our identities. Not just in terms of like what identity groups do I belong to, but what is my identity of who I feel I am at this deeper level when I get past the ego, when I get past the things that are programmed into me, when I get past all these things that I thought I was, and the wounding that can exist in that is this shakeup around that. And at the same time, we have the moon nodes in this same configuration. So north node of the moon is right between Chiron and Eris, almost conjuncting Eris. So the north node is where the future is pointing us. The nodes of the moon go around the zodiac once every 16 years. So it's this longer arc pattern of what the trajectory of the past and the future are about. So as we understand our own identity, as we feel this discord and shakeup in this question of who am I, and the wounding that can come up with that, and that's going into the future of understanding that in deeper ways. It's like looking back at the past, and it's like always looking at the balance. The south node, it's like where did we come from in terms of our understanding of being in harmony with other people? How is our own exploration of identity in balance with partnership, in balance with our relationships with other people? Because we're not just isolated beings. It's like finding this self-sovereignty, finding this connection to our own identity is vitally important, but it's like it has to be done again in balance, Libra, in balance with the other. That's some things about identity. That's making a square. This Eris is making a square with the Pluto, Sun, Moon. So there's this like shake-up in identity still happening that is becoming into a tension line with our intention setting. So it's like, how can we understand like the pain of our own identity and be creating, again, in alignment with what we want the vibration to be, with connection with others, while understanding these wounded identity patterns and not coming from that wounding in the intentions that we're setting, in what we're setting into emotion, in this Capricorn time that we're in. Okay, and the last major aspects I want to talk about in this chart is this Jupiter-Uranus placement. Jupiter and Uranus, both in Taurus. Jupiter is now direct. Uranus is going to go direct in the next couple months. Taurus being the sign of sustenance, it's as in sustaining, the sustaining energy. It's like financial stability. Jupiter being this like expansion. How do we expand into that? Again, there's like these patterns, and Jupiter making a trine with Mercury in Sagittarius. This like mental opening to a higher understanding connected to how do we find an expansion of wealth, of finding a stability of resources, finding this groundedness. And Uranus is retrograde, but it's about to go direct, of this like revolutionizing of how we connect to that. Uranus has an orbit of 84 years. So it's several years that it spends in one sign. And as it moves through that sign, it's like creating innovation, creating revolutions in that. There's a lot of people thinking about what are the new ways that we make money? The old traditions of finding financial stability and grounding in material resources through traditional mechanisms like climbing a corporate ladder are not working anymore. The methods of marketing and sales that people have been using are not working anymore. So it's like we're finding this revolution in how to go about that in a different way. And it's like, don't get caught up in feeling like, oh, things are not going my way because it's changing. It's like we always have to be adapting, always have to be understanding the waves of what's happening in life so that we can surf it. It's not, none of this is about finding some sort of static state of being where it's like, oh, now I've got it figured out. The universe is always in flux, always in this dynamic motion of evolution and change that has this unfolding through time that we experience, and whose patterns are ruled by these planets. Okay, so all in all, we've got this Jupiter-Uranus in Taurus. We've got this Saturn-Neptune in Pisces. We've got Mercury-Venus in Sagittarius. We've got Sun-Moon-Pluto-Mars in Capricorn. So we've got these interesting like clumpings of planets, and also signified, qualified by these asteroids, Ceres, Pholus, Nessus, and Chiron. And I just want to point out too that it's like okay, we have these like opposition asteroids as well. So it's like as we find this innovation and expansion into ways that we create wealth, we also have Pallas here in Scorpio. Pallas is Athena. Pallas is the genius. It's this like feminine genius. It's like Athena being this like warrior goddess, the warrior princess archetype of, it's like where do we charge forward with confidence, where our greatest capacities lie. So it's finding the genius to transform. Scorpio is the transformation, opposing that, finding stability and expansion and wealth. So again, it's like the opposition is where the unlock is. So it's like, can we transform? Can we transform our genius and find our that like powerful huntress energy to then find new ways of being with these patterns? Similarly, these mental passion, expansion for higher understanding for the learning contained in Sagittarius. We have Vesta here, retrograde, interestingly, in Gemini. Vesta is the hearth. Vesta is our home, how we find it's like the stability of safety, and in Gemini. So it's like finding that in dialogue with other people, in finding like this intuitive movement through life. Home connected to that as much as our mind and our passion are going towards these higher learning opportunities. Also in opposition here, we have the Saturn, Neptune, Nessus in Pisces, this like deep dreaming, introspection going into the subconscious. And at the same time, we have Juno in Virgo. Juno is the ruler of partnership and commitment, long-term commitment. Can we commit to service? Virgo being about service and harvest and being in the world. While this deep subconscious unfolding, unearthing is happening, can we commit to people and to loving people and to being in commitment to service and to being in our work in the world? All right, so those are the primary aspects happening in the movements of astrology right now. All right, it's gotten sunny and bright since I started talking. Okay, so as we end, I just want to have another note about the nature of moving through time and the nature of free will, that there's these patterns unfolding, and it's our choice of like, okay, do we want to move in alignment with these patterns that are happening? And there's always the choice in every moment of what frequency do we want to step into? Do we want to step into a frequency that feels good, that feels like what we want to be in alignment with, that feels true to who we really are, that feels true to our real timeline? Because something that's come through in many of my plant medicine journeys is this understanding that the quantum, you could say, infinite timeline nature of reality is that each being, each node of perception that exists is in its own unique timeline. And it's this paradox because we're in a world where other people exist and we're interacting with other beings. But we're each in our own unique universe that we're shaping with our consciousness. When I say the inner is a mirror of the outer, it's like when we shift our vibration inside, the entire rest of the cosmos moves to shift into that same vibration. And the part of the paradox is like the planets are moving and we don't control that, but we do control the shift of energy inside us. And so this invitation to, as we move forward, to move forward with balance. Coming back again to the card, the tarot card of the day, the root chakra. Oh, see if I can get it to go. There we go. Coming back to the root chakra, being rooted and grounded as we move through all these things. That it's not about reaching forward into grabbing onto something, but being present with like what's here. And this is why, again, I'm really opposed to thinking about astrology as like some kind of prediction. That it's like we can see how the planets are moving and understand the waves that are coming, but it's about being here and now. There's nowhere to go. It's not about reaching into the past while understanding the past is important. It's not about reaching into the future while understanding the future is important. But being in this rooted presence in a grounded here and now. Okay, friends. I think that about wraps it up. Let's see if we have any questions in the YouTube stream. Okay. I'm going to wait a little bit. I see some friends. Hi, Hannah. Hi, David. Okay, I'm going to give a little minute because the stream's a little bit delayed to see if anybody wants to ask questions. Was not able to go on the Instagram, but yeah. Give it a couple seconds here. See if any of you have any questions. I see 5 of you watching right now. Getting going. Yeah, it's a beautiful time. See a lovely reflection of light off this beautiful lake in front of me right now. Okay, I think I'm going to close down. I don't see any questions coming through. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to put this stream up on YouTube if you've been watching for replays. Thanks, Hannah. Yes, this is recorded. It's going to be posted on my YouTube, and I'll put a link to it on my Instagram also. Okay. Great. I'm going to close up. It's been fun. It's been real. Love you all. See you soon.